Hey everybody, it's Gary Mears. It's good to be with you. I hope you're enjoying this video message series that began with Lent and is now carrying on through Easter and the events that occurred after Easter, after the resurrection, and before Jesus ultimately ascends into heaven. We'll wrap this series up at the end of this month, and then in May we'll start something new. I also hope in the next couple weeks I'll have some more information for you about live in-person worship. As we all get vaccinated and the world begins to open up yet again, we're working to put plans together to do just that. So more information on that in the weeks to come. In the meantime, let's jump right in. Today we're going to talk about Thomas. You may know him as Doubting Thomas, the apostle. And here's the story that dubbed him Doubting Thomas. It comes from John chapter 20. So when Jesus first appeared to the disciples, this would be that first Sunday night in the upper room, Thomas wasn't with them. So when the other disciples said to him, "We've seen the Lord," Thomas said to them, "Unless I see the mark of the nail in his hands, and I put my finger in the mark of the nails and my hand in his side, I will not believe." A week later, it says, the disciples were again in the upper room, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were shut, Gospel says, though the doors were shut, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Jesus then turned to Thomas and said, "Put your finger here. See my hands? Reach out your hand and put it in my side. Do not doubt, but believe." Thomas answered him, "My Lord and my God." Jesus then said to Thomas, "Have you believed because you've seen me? Blessed are those who've not seen, yet have still come to believe." So that's the story that earned Thomas the nickname Doubting Thomas. But here's another story about Thomas. It's from John chapter 11. Jesus had a friend named Lazarus. Lazarus had two sisters, Mary and Martha, and he lived in Bethany, which is right outside of Jerusalem. Lazarus grew quite ill, and his sisters sent a message to Jesus that said, "Lord, he whom you love is ill." Jesus got that message. He was up north somewhere, probably in the Sea of Galilee area, quite possibly in Capernaum. And he stayed there for a couple of days after receiving that message. He then turns to his disciples and said, "Let's go to Judea. Let's go down south to where Lazarus is." The disciples said to him, "Rabbi, the Jews were just trying to kill you. They were trying to stone you to death. And you want to go back to Jerusalem again?" Jesus said to the disciples, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep." Disciples then said, "Well, if he's asleep, he'll wake up again. He'll be all right." Jesus then said plainly, "Lazarus is dead. For your sake, I'm glad I wasn't there. For now you may see and you may believe. Let's go." At this point in time, Thomas says to the other disciples, "Let's go. Let's go also that we may die with him." And off they went. They get down to Bethany, and in fact, Lazarus is dead. He's been buried for 4 days, and there's a large group of friends and family there with Mary and Martha mourning with them. Jesus goes to the tomb where Lazarus had been buried. They get the stone in front of the tomb moved away, and Jesus calls out, "Lazarus, come out." And come out he did. It says the dead man came out, his hands and feet still wrapped in the cloth that he had been buried in. Many of the Jews, therefore, who had come with Mary and had seen what Jesus did, believed in him. There's a whole lot to this story of Lazarus and Mary and Martha, and I could talk about this for a long time. It's really the turning point, the key turning point in the Gospel of John. But I started this wanting to talk about Thomas. So let's go back to Thomas. Again, we may know him as Doubting Thomas because of that resurrection story where he said, "I won't believe in the resurrected Christ until I physically see his flesh and bones." But then Thomas is also the guy who rallies the disciples together to go to Judea, to go to Bethany, in spite of the risk of being that close to the powerful Jews in Jerusalem. He rallies them together to go. So, Thomas is inconsistent in his faith. Join the club. Aren't we all? Turns out Thomas the Apostle is just like the rest of us. And it's very reminiscent of the story in the Bible of Peter, where in Matthew chapter 14, Peter walks on water. Then after Jesus is arrested, Peter denies he even knows who Jesus is 3 times. Jesus told him he was going to deny him 3 times before the rooster crows, and in fact, he did. Then he's confronted by the resurrected Christ a couple of days later. And then some weeks after that, he preaches at Pentecost very publicly, very boldly, at great risk to himself. And it says 3,000 people were added to the church that day because of that sermon. So there again, we see Peter, like Thomas, very inconsistent in his faith. But here's the difference. Peter didn't preach at Pentecost because he suddenly became more skilled, more able, more brave. No. It says he was able to preach at Pentecost because he was filled with the Holy Spirit. You can read about that in Acts chapter 2. Likewise, Peter didn't walk on water because he gained some great skill or talent or ability on his own. No. Peter, when he saw Jesus walking on the water, called to him and said, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." And Jesus said, "Come." And with that, Peter climbed over the gunwales of the boat and began to walk to Jesus on the water. It's when Peter became more self-reliant, when he became distracted from Jesus, that's when he began to sink. Likewise, when Peter became separated from Jesus after his arrest, and became more self-reliant then, that's when he denied that he even knew who Jesus was. And likewise for us, when we become more self-reliant, that's when our faith weakens. So again, Thomas is in the upper room with the disciples. This is probably about a week after Easter, after the original appearance of Jesus to the disciples in the upper room that happened Easter night. So a week later, they're all together. And Jesus says to Thomas, "Put your finger here. See my hands? Reach out your hand and put it in my side, in the wound. Do not doubt, but believe." And with that, Thomas says again, "My Lord and my God." For you see, seeing Jesus was enough for Thomas. He'd said he needed to touch the wound. He needed to put his hand in the side, but ultimately he didn't. He saw Jesus and he came to truly, strongly believe. Now, what happened next for Peter? We're not really, for Thomas, we're not really sure. There's a good bit of writing about Peter in the book of Acts, but there's nothing further in the Bible that said what Thomas went on to do. There is some extra biblical, some outside of biblical writings that say this, that perhaps Thomas became a great missionary who perhaps traveled as far as China. There's even a Mount of St. Thomas on the eastern coast of India, and it's believed that perhaps Thomas went there and was even martyred there for his faith. Thomas ultimately came to faith when he saw the risen Christ. When Jesus said to him, "Do not doubt, but believe." We can't see the risen Christ today in flesh, in bones, but we can feel his presence. That's what Easter is all about. Jesus said to Thomas, "Have you believed because you've seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen, yet still have come to believe." Again, we're not going to see Jesus yet in the flesh, but we can read these accounts. We can feel his presence. Let us seek to believe in and not doubt. Have a great week. It's good to be with you. If you want to talk to me further about the story of Lazarus or about doubting Thomas or about any of this, reach out to me. I'd be eager to hear from you. Have a good week, everybody. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.